Hello again, audiophiles. I am Wave Theory, back again today to review the Focal Elex headphone. All right, a couple of quick notes before I get into that. One, you might hear that my voice is a little bit raspy. I have come down with what I believe is a throat cold here the past couple of days, so please bear with me on that. I did take a COVID test. It was negative. So if you were concerned about that, that's all clear. So if this video jumps around a little bit more than the others, it's probably because I hit the pause button so I could cough. In fact, I'm going to position it there just so I can do that if needed. All right. Also, if you like what I'm doing here on these reviews of sound gear, please like and subscribe. And I do hope to have some additional things to present to you guys, some moving to other platforms and such as well in the near future. So look out for all those ways that you can support me going forward. Okay. The Focal Elex. All right, a $700 collaboration between what was Massdrop and is now just Drop and Focal. So this is designed, manufactured, built by Focal and sold and distributed, at least in the United States, through Drop, formerly Massdrop. $700. It is an open back dynamic driver headphone. All right. Now, it is a Focal, as I said. So again, just like in my clear video, I'm not going to spend a ton of time talking about the build quality of this because, I mean, it is a Focal. They all have the same chassis. They just change a little bit in terms of their aesthetics and like what's on the back of the cups. The pads change a little bit, but the basic structure of the frame and all of that is the same. They all have the same features and the 3.5 millimeter dual entry for the cable on the cup. Okay, which is the same on all Focal headphones save the Utopia. All right, so there it is. You get the Focal build quality and all that. Even this can spreading, okay, the width of these things, which can make them a little bit of a challenge to store, like next to other headphones at times. It messes up the spacing, but like that's there too. All right, so beyond that, you have an 80 ohm aluminum magnesium driver in here that is also rated at a 104 decibel per milliwatt sensitivity. If I understand Drop's website correctly, what this is they took an E-Lear driver, refined it a little bit, put it in a similar housing, and then took clear pads and gave them microperf. I think the clear pads were microperf, but they put clear pads on this and all that, and then put it into this $700 package. So, I mean, the aesthetic is not super exciting. It's just matte black everywhere, but it has a certain handsome charm to it, I think, in that regard. And then the fit and the comfort is classic Focal. Okay? I mean, if you've seen my videos about Focal, that's what it is. All right. So that 80 ohm impedance with the 104 decibel per milliwatt sensitivity that I just mentioned, it is easy to drive. I plugged it into my Canon N6II DAP with EO2 module, handled it just fine. So if you have a mobile amp or a DAP that you want to power this with, chances are you're going to be fine. Okay, so then the sound. I would say the signature of this is a mild W shape, meaning there's just a slight elevation in the bass, just a slight elevation in the treble, and a little bit of an elevation near the middle of the mid-range range, like somewhere in like the 1 to 2 kilohertz region is just slightly emphasized above neutral. Now, to my ear, again, I have that mid-range sensitivity where I perceive shoutiness and honkiness quite quickly. The middle of that W hump does seem to be emphasized just a little bit more than the bass and treble elevations. So for me, these can get a little bit shouty at times, a little bit honky. Brass instruments can be a little bit blaring and overpowering at times. Right, so that's also a comment on the timbre, which we'll come back to in a minute. But I did not find the shoutiness and the honkiness to be all that objectionable all that often. So it doesn't happen all the time, and when it does, it's not horrid. It's just there, and something that I think you should be aware of. Now, the other traits of the sound are very quintessential Focal. The macro dynamic punch and slam. The physicality is here, and that's something that, again, it's a focal, so that's just one of the traits of their house sound, is that they hit you, okay? And this one does that just as well as any of them, probably, although it's maybe not as tight in that punch, in that slam, it's still the impact is there. All right, then you also get the focal staging. And when I have described that as like your head kind of being in a bubble around you, I've also described that in the past as speakers and other headphone makers, like Hi-Fi-Man is a good example. Like they have this, they present the sound out in front of you in their staging. So if you go to like a symphonic performance in a concert hall, it's like you're sitting in the audience and the music is up on the stage, and you still hear like reverberations and echoes, and if there's noise from the audience, you hear that happening beside and behind you at times, but the music itself is pretty much coming from up in front of you. With this one, with the Elex and other focals, it's more like you're standing on the maestro stand. Okay, that doesn't necessarily mean the instrument sounds and all of that are necessarily coming from behind you, but it is like closer and more like this rather than out like this. Okay, so that's neither good nor bad. It just is. It's a matter of preference there. But the focal staging, that is another trait of the focal house sound, and it's here too. Now, the imaging and separation within that soundstage is, I would say, quite appropriate, actually very good for a $700 headphone. You do get reasonably good imaging, okay, the positive, like where does it sound like a sound is coming from, and then you also get pretty good separation, like the negative of the spatial sound description of like, is there space between sonic images? All right. And again, it does a pretty good job of that for $700. I would say at that price point, and may call it the $600 to $800 range, it's probably one of the better headphones you're going to find in that regard. Now, there were still some recordings I listened to, like the Last of the Mohicans film soundtrack from the 1992 version of that film. Listening to that big orchestra and its big grandiose theme presentation and all of that, I did think that there was a bit of blurring of sounds together. Some of the separation did not hold up very well, and some of the depth to the soundstage collapsed a little bit, and it was a bit more wall of sound but there again, if you've been watching my channel, you've seen that I have been reviewing primarily headphones that are like, you know, the cheapest one mostly has so far been the LCDX 2021, which is $1,200. The vast majority I've reviewed on this channel before have been much higher than that. So I'm used to a little bit more staging, but this really seems like it held it together well for a under $1,000 headphone. So I'm pretty comfortable saying that this one will do it better than most in its price range. All right, you do get good frequency extension in either direction too. Fairly good bass extension, fairly good air in the treble. Again, I've heard better, but at $700, it's going to be one of the better ones at those things. I'm fairly confident in that. All right. Then I mentioned timbre a little bit ago. I would say that for a focal, the timbre is a relative strength. I think the timbre here is pretty close to being as good as like what its big brother, the Clear, at least the original Clear, can bring to the table. And so when you factor in that this is $700 and the Clear originally launched at nearly $1,500, like there's a fair value statement there in terms of the timbre, the overall. Does it make sounds sound like they're supposed to? I'm going to do one of those pauses for a moment. All right, sorry about that. I am back. All right. So again, timbre. Do pianos sound like pianos? Do voices sound like voices? Do violins sound like violins? Do drums sound like drums? You know, on and on, that sort of thing. And so this one, I think, comes pretty close to its big brother, the Clear, in that regard. Now, that's significant for a couple of reasons. One, I just mentioned the price difference, but another is that focal across their line does not excel at timbre. The Utopia is pretty good. The Radiance is excellent on natural timbre, but the rest of the line is a little bit in that regard. So this one is not necessarily better than any of its siblings, but its price to performance in that specific area is much higher than Clear or Stellia or or those models there. All right. That said, you're probably still going to find some headphones out there cheaper than this that have better and more natural timbre. Okay, the Massdrop Sennheiser, HD6XX, or the HD650, HD600. So that HD600 series, maybe not the 660S, but the 600 and the 650, definitely better timbre than this. The Beyer DT880, at least the 600 ohm, better timbre than this. Okay, but still solid. Still solid. Okay. So, I mean, you add up all of that together. The signature, the timbre. I don't even know if I mentioned resolution yet, so I'll talk about that here since we're on it. Like, the resolution here is also very good. Like, this pulled out a lot of stuff in the music that I didn't necessarily expect it to. Also, and I know a lot of people out there take issue with this, but this headphone, even at $700, resolved differences in cables pretty well too, and I could readily tell a difference in the quality of my Plus Sound X8 cable and a Heart cable, for example. Okay, even on this $700 headphone. So the resolution there is pretty good. All right, and I am planning to do a video series on why we actually can hear differences in cables. There is science behind that. Okay, the science is out there. It just exists in little bits and pieces around, and I haven't really heard anyone pull all that together. And I hope to be able to do that in the near future, so stay tuned for that. All right. So yeah, resolution, I would say, is a strength, and it is among one of the most resolving headphones at its price point. Okay, so let's put it there. So then let's come back to what I was just saying, that when you put all of this together, like the signature, the frequency extension, the macrodynamic impact, the timbre still being reasonably good, definitely good for a focal and for the price, for a focal at this price, and resolution, the quality of the imaging and separation. The stage isn't huge, but the imaging and separation, pretty strong for the price. All that. This is a really solid $700 headphone. It's really good. Okay, so if you are in the market, if you're in that, maybe $500 or $600 to $800 range looking for a new headphone, need to pause again, one moment. All right, if you are in that price range there looking for a brand new headphone that is overall really good, put this on your list of things to check out. Now, one unfortunate bit about this is that it's currently not in stock at Massdrop. I was just on their website before I came to film this video, and it says the wait for this one to ship is now March 17, 2022, so St. Patrick's Day. Okay, that's a bit of a wait because I shoot this on December 16th, 2021. So, what is that? Is that 4 months? Anyway, something like that. It's a ways out there. So that's one thing to consider. If you happen to be audience in the future coming back because it's April 2021 and this is in stock again, maybe, the story about what I'm about to say might change a little bit. But for right now, I think that needs to be understood, that if you put an order in for this one at Massdrop, you're not going to get it until close to April. All right. But even with that, if it were available, I really can't fault this headphone in and of itself. As a $700 package, it's really good, and I can easily give it a recommendation because at $700, it's really good. It does a lot of things well, and its weaknesses are not glaring, and they are not deal breakers for me, and I think for most people. Okay? The issue for me is what's on either side of it. So, I've reviewed before, some of my earlier reviews, I reviewed the Beyer Dynamic DT880 600 ohm that I just talked about. I reviewed the Sennheiser HD6XX, which is also a Massdrop distributed model. Okay, those are both right about $200. And they really seriously warp the price to performance curve at their price point, and they punch way above their weight. Okay, so is this worth the $500 extra over those two? Maybe, maybe not. If you don't have a very powerful amp, this probably would be worth the upgrade. But for $500, you could get a really good amp to power either of those other two that I just mentioned, and they really wake up. Like if you're sitting at Atom or like one of the Magnis or, a topping L30, especially a topping L30, okay, something like that, and you jump up to say, like a Lake People G111, that's at $549, so less than this, or a Bottlehead Crack with Speedball, because those two play really well with tubes, all that, OTL tubes, like, you might actually get a bigger performance jump than if you just bought this. On the other side, the Focal Clear, a big brother model to this one, which I just reviewed recently, and I will link to that review in the description below. Originally listed at $1,500 US. Now that it is a discontinued model and has been around for a while, you can often find it used, or open box units or something like that, or sometimes they just go on sale for like $1,000 or less. If you can pick up a Clear for $750, $800, $900, maybe even $1,000. In my opinion, the price to performance ratio is much higher than this at $700. Get this at $500, okay? I mean, yeah, that's a pretty good deal, and I would strongly consider that if you're looking to spend that kind of money. At $700, compared to a Clear at $900, just as an example, I would say pinch your pennies and get the Clear. Okay, this and the Clear sound similar-ish. The Clear has, as I mentioned in that video, has better bass extension, so a little bit more true deep sub-bass rumble. It has a little bit better top-end air extension as well. It's also much more resolving and has a much more coherent sound stage with better imaging and separation. It just sounds more complete and put together, right, and refined in its overall presentation than this one. So that's just trying to be an honest reviewer here. I think those are the things you have to consider. Yes, this is an excellent $700 headphone. I think it also gets squeezed on either side by the DT880, the 650/6XX, okay? Or if you can get a deal on the Clear, and I might even add in if you could get a similarly good deal on like a Fostex TH900, because the Fostex might be a little, I mean, it's more V-shaped, but in terms of the rest of the qualities, the staging and the resolution and the punch and slam, Fostex is right there with Focal, but Fostex usually has a little bit better timbre to go with it. So if you can handle the hotness of the Fostex treble, then the rest of that stuff, like it's something to consider. But that said, you get that around $1,000-ish, $800, $900, $1,000. I'd start looking into those maybe. So yeah, you got to weigh that. And then of course you throw in that you have a 3 to 4 month wait to get these right now, and yeah, what happens? Okay, I mean, that's up to you to decide, but hopefully I have just given you some things to think about. But in a vacuum, considering just this for $700, thumbs up. Good. It is very good, okay? Don't want to take it away from it. The value proposition at that price point, I think, is just a bit tricky right now, I think is what it comes down to. All right, I will leave it there. I am Wave Theory. This has been my review of the Focal Elex. Sorry about my hoarse, coarse voice right now and my pauses for coughing. Hopefully that will pass soon. And until next time, enjoy the music.